We're happy to have with us today from Nashville the Secretary of State for Tennessee, Mr. Trey Hargett. And we have some local elected officials with us. The Mayor of Smyrna, Mary Esther Reed, and her husband, Brent Reed, are here. From the City of Murfreesboro, we've got two members of the City Council, Bill Shacklett and Austin Maxwell. Thank you all for coming. American Democracy Project schedules and sponsors activities all year long, but this week, as I indicated before, is special. One of the things we do is have public readings of the Constitution, and so all across campus yesterday and today, groups led by our academic colleges and other campus organizations read the Constitution in entirety out loud across campus. So that's always a great thing to see. Along with those readings, we've had a long history of inviting on Constitution Day itself special guest speakers to talk about constitutional issues. And we always invite, of course, our students, faculty, and members of the community. And today, of course, our special guest is the Honorable Mike Pence, the 48th Vice President of the United States, who will be formally introduced in a few moments. As we begin today's event, I want to underscore MTSU's commitment to providing a welcoming environment for the free expression of ideas. We believe this is essential in helping students prepare to become more engaged citizens and well-rounded people. As home to both the Free Speech Center and the John Siegenthaler Chair in First Amendment Studies, MTSU has been recognized nationally for our support of freedom of speech. In 2018, our Board of Trustees formally adopted what is known as the Chicago Statement, a set of principles that make clear that our role here at MTSU is not to shield people from ideas that they might find disagreeable, but rather to create a marketplace of ideas where everybody can participate. And today's event falls under that umbrella. In keeping with that commitment, I ask that we allow our speakers to freely share their thoughts and encourage all of you to hold any questions or comments for the Q&A after the discussion. We're especially happy to have our students here with us today, and I'm glad to present to you our president of the SGA, Mr. Mackay Mosby, and he's got with him several members of the SGA Executive Board. So welcome to you all and all the students in the audience. At this time, I want to invite Dr. Mary Evans, Professor of History, to come to the podium. Mary is a dynamo and the driving force behind this day and the American Democracy Project for many years now. So let's welcome Dr. Evans to the podium.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burns, and welcome to all of you for another spectacular Constitution Day at MTSU. We're pleased to be able to host this plenary event at MTSU's Tucker Theater, and we want to very much thank the MTSU Department of Theater and Dance for opening this space to us. And although you may not actually see it, we were worried that today we were going to have Eurydice's pool and a waterfall accompanying us on the stage, which will be here next week when this play opens on September 26th and runs through the weekend of the 29th. So we hope that you will come back to opening night of Eurydice just about 10 days from now and reimagine with MTSU the classic myth of Orpheus retold in a contemporary lens. The play is a new look at a timeless love story, and we hope you'll join us back here in Tucker Theater on this campus for that. So again, we thank the Department of Theater and Dance and the amazing staff of Tucker who has put all this together for us and made it possible. We'd also like to thank the sponsors for this program's participation here and for contributing to making it possible. Certainly the Albert Gore Research Center, the Siegenthaler Chair for Excellence in First Amendment Studies, the Center for Educational Media, the Department of History, the Department of Political and Global Affairs, the College of Liberal Arts, the University Honors College, the Office of the University Provost, the League of Women Voters of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, the Buchanan Fellows Enrichment Fund, the Distinguished Lecture Fund, and this university's forever friend, Mr. Jeff Worley, all for sponsoring today's program. John F. Worley Jr., or Jeff Worley, as most of you know him, grew up here in Murfreesboro. He's a Rutherford County native. He attended MTSU's campus school for much of his schooling, and he's a successful businessman. He's been involved in multiple Fortune 500 companies and developing multiple startup ventures, involved in the careers and professional development of thousands of employees. And he's worked for and with government entities and nonprofit organizations, and he's been executive VP for Sallie Mae and its financial aid services and technology divisions. He's currently head of Pfizer Enterprise, Pfizer Education, which provides student loan servicing technology for both federal and private student loans, directing the company's education technology business that he developed. Jeff has served and serves on many boards and commissions, including currently the Ports of Indiana Commission and the MTSU Honors College Board of Visitors, for which he was the first chair some years ago. Mr. Worley is the nephew of Nobel Prize laureate Dr. James M. Buchanan, whom he fondly refers to as Uncle Buck. And it has been Mr. Worley who was the prime mover keeping his uncle very connected to Middle Tennessee State University over the years. He presented to the university Dr. Buchanan's Nobel Prize medallion for permanent display here, and he was the one who facilitated the Buchanan Fellows Enrichment Fund at Middle Tennessee State University, for which we are exceedingly grateful. Although with strong Rutherford County and Tennessee roots, Mr. Worley and his family live in Zionsville, Indiana, which is part of sort of the greater metropolitan area of Indianapolis. He got to Indiana presumably because of his MBA, which he took from the University of Indianapolis, and he became connected there, and it's where his businesses are headquartered. And it was because of his professional life in Indiana that he became friends with today's Constitution Day distinguished guest. So Mr. Worley will be the one to provide the introduction to our speaker. So please help me in welcoming back to campus Mr. Jeff Worley, who is the friend and family of MTSU and one of this university's strongest advocates. Mr. Worley.
Thank you, Dr. Evans, for all the work you've put into today. Thank you particularly, Dr. John Weil, for the Honors College leadership in putting this event together. It's great to be here. I can see several old friends here, and it's good to be home and on this campus that changes every time I come back to it. Sydney McPhee and team, great work, absolutely great work. This is quite a place. It was quite a place in the old days, but it's really quite a place now. I have friends like Andy Womack here. Andy, where are you? And Andy served this state with distinction, but much more importantly, was my 12-year-old baseball coach. Mark Burns, for those of you students who've had Mark Burns in class, know that when he was 11 years old on the Chicks in the Southern League, playing at Oakland Park not far from here, ran the bases like a locomotive, and I mean literally like a locomotive. And probably the person that redirected my career to business most importantly is here. Van Hillary, are you here? I don't know if Van made it. But I thought maybe we thought maybe Van was going to make it to today. He helped me in 1994 understand that I didn't need to go to Congress, but needed to start a career in business. We have a very special guest today, Vice President Mike Pence, and his story is quite something. It's truly, I think, a great American story. He was born in Columbus, Indiana, in 1959, went to Columbus North High School, where he was tops on the speech team, senior class president, and imagine this, chairman of Fun Day. That's the way I always think of Mike Pence, right? He went to Hanover College, quite a good school in Indiana, and then got his law degree at the Indiana University Law School. Started practice, but started dabbling in politics. He had a strong interest in politics in the late 80s, and like so many of us, ran for Congress in 88 and lost, and 90 and lost. But then after those two experiences, decided to turn some of his attention to a radio show, the Mike Pence radio show. He started with one station, then he got on more stations, and more stations, and it was quite a success, and he ended up having the show on TV. Mike made what he describes as the difficult decision to leave that successful path and run for Congress again in 2000, and he was elected. And right from the start, you heard about Mike Pence just not quite doing what the elders of the party wanted. He wouldn't just go along. He had this strange conviction about asking, how are we paying for this? And stuck with that right to this very day. In 2006, he ran for the leadership and came in second to John Boehner for the top job. In 2008, Enterprise magazine named him one of the top 10 members of Congress. And in 2009, he tried at leadership again. Are you seeing a theme here? He tried it at leadership again and was elected the chairman of the Republican Conference, one of the top jobs in the House of Representatives. I met Mike 18 years ago. He came out to a brand new call center where we were having free lunch for everyone day. And we had Congressman Mike Pence as our guest speaker, and I got to introduce him. So I'm old hat at this. We had every employee attended. I thought, well, this is a popular speaker. Then I was reminded we did have free pizza. So in balance. But I watched him then, and I got a pretty good eye for political talent. What a talented guy in terms of communicating with people, even people he didn't agree with. Our employees found it invigorating and positive and came to me and said, when can we have him back? The next time he was there, where I really was how he became, in my mind, connected to MTSU. He walked up to me and said, I hear you're James Buchanan's nephew. And I said, yes, I am. And he goes, well, I've read 4 of his books. Do you know how many other people have read that I've met 4 of Buchanan's books? 0. Mike Pence is it. And then he said, now you're his nephew. I said, yes. He goes, is that by marriage? But I knew then that there was a connection with Buchanan's connection to this university, that someday I'd love to see Mike Pence here, because I believe that Mike Pence comes the closest to trying to apply James Buchanan's philosophy that this generation shouldn't steal from future generations' earnings and wealth and money and tax dollars. He comes the closest to that of any modern politician. And therefore, with this university's connection to James Buchanan, I think on Constitution Day, it is entirely appropriate that Mike Pence be our guest. Vice President Pence, welcome.
Well, sir, they tell me these mics are going to work and that they're on, so hooray. Glad that's an ominous first step. We certainly welcome the 48th Vice President of the United States to MTSU. And, sir, we very much appreciate your being here. Today,
my honor, thank you.
Today is Constitution Day, and for MTSU's highly respected annual Constitution Day observance, we're delighted to welcome and honor a hero of the U.S. Constitution, because among his many other legacies, this gentleman will be in history books forever, and you heard that from me, because he will be remembered as the Vice President of the United States who, against all odds and against his own personal advancement, believed so strongly in U.S. principles and the U.S. Constitution, and his own oath of office, so help him God, that he stood up for the U.S. Constitution. It was an act of moral and civic courage, and the entire nation is sincerely appreciative. And we're thrilled to have him dialogue with us today. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Evans. And it is wonderful to be at Middle Tennessee State University, the largest undergraduate university in the great state of Tennessee. And I want to thank you and the department. I want to thank Provost Burns. But I especially want to express my appreciation to President McPhee and to Steve Smith, the chairman of the Board of Trustees. It is a remarkable statement of the commitment of this university to the founding principles of this country. Now that for 25 years, you have hosted Constitution Day, an entire week where we celebrate the founding principles of this nation. And I want to commend you for that, President McPhee, and all the members of the Board of Trustees and the faculty. It's an honor to be with you all. It truly is. I do believe it is altogether fitting to do so. It was many years ago when 39 delegates at the Constitutional Convention put their signatures on a draft of the Constitution of the United States. I believe, and history proves it out, it was the greatest charter for liberty in human history. It created the foundation and the framework for the establishment of the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But as I meet with you today, I hope to be able to be transparent about my story, because I was a little bit younger than most of the Blue Raiders in this room. When I first began to learn about the Constitution, I was in an oratorical contest sponsored by the American Legion, which is a wonderful veterans organization based in Indiana. In fact, I know an awful lot of veterans attend Middle, and maybe we could give them a round of applause for their service to the country. We're grateful to each and every one of you. But it was in that American Legion speech contest as a teenager that I had to go to the library and pull a copy of the Constitution off the shelf and really begin to study it. I actually thought the Constitution was just a document for the organization of the government. But as great minds like James Buchanan and others have unpacked for us through the years, it was a document that was grounded in a commitment to liberty, a commitment to limited government, a commitment to a separation of powers that would ensure the survival of liberty, both individual liberties and the liberties of the people. And in every real sense, I think it was a document that our founders believed was rightly grounded in an understanding of human nature. And so for me to be here on Constitution Day at a school that's such a long and storied commitment to helping the rising generation understand the foundations of our country is a great privilege. And also, Dr. Evans, I'm deeply humbled by those introductory words. My journey began as a teenager studying the Constitution, but when that day that you referred to came more than 3 years ago, I always tell people it wasn't a day in January of 2021, it was a day in January of 2017. I put my left hand on Ronald Reagan's Bible, I raised my right hand, and I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And it ended with a prayer, so help me God. The oath of office actually didn't include that, as history records in the beginning. It was George Washington, one of those signers of the Constitution so long ago, that actually added it the first time he took the oath of office. And I tell people that when I took that oath, it was a promise that I believe that I'd made to the American people, but it was also a promise that I made to Almighty God. And while I'm humbled by your gracious words, and I'll leave the judgment of it to others and to history, I'll always believe it was by God's grace that I did my duty that day to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it was a great honor for me to do so. But thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I pivot to a James Buchanan question? So you are now on record as having read 4 of his books. What among Dr. Buchanan's sort of economic theories and his economic ideas also had political impact potentially in your life?
Well, for me, again, that journey begins in high school. I grew up in a family that wasn't that interested in politics, to be honest with you. My dad ran gas stations in a small town in southern Indiana. My grandfather had immigrated to this country. But from early on in my life, I was very inspired by the example of President John F. Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And so in my teenage years, I told my dad I wanted to get involved in politics, and he said, fine, go talk to my lawyer downtown, who happened to be a Democrat. And I was the Youth Democrat Party coordinator in Bartholomew County, Indiana in 1975. Knocked on a lot of doors and campaigned for Democrat candidates as a youth activist. But I must tell you that after the 40th president of the United States was elected in 1980, I started to listen to the voice of Ronald Reagan. I started to hear a commitment to a strong national defense, to traditional values, to limited government described in that Constitution. And I joined the Republican Party and never looked back. And but all along the way, it's very much like a lot of the young people here. I mean, you're in a process of learning that I hope is lifelong for you. It certainly is for me. But at that time in my life, I tried my hand at politics in my late 20s, wasn't successful. But shortly after that, I began to make a careful study of what it is I believed and why it is I believed it. And that's when I came across the extraordinary work of James Buchanan. I was running a small policy group in Indiana called the Indiana Policy Review Foundation, and we entertained the likes of William F. Buckley and others in the state of Indiana. But it was a very formative time for me. But what James Buchanan helped me understand, and it would be recognized worldwide for conveying, is that the same things, if I can paraphrase this, and then you can correct me, Dr. Evans, but the same things that motivate people in the private sector to expand their influence motivate people in the government sector. And that's why you have to have limited government. That's why you have to create restraints on government power. It was a brilliant notion, and probably what was most ahead of his time was the recognition that left to its own devices, government will take from future generations to pay for its expenses today. And if you haven't seen the news this week, we're at $35 trillion in a national debt. And in the next year, we'll actually pay $1.2 trillion in interest on that national debt. James Buchanan didn't speak of that just as a fiscal issue. What moved me is he spoke about it as a moral issue. I believe in my heart of hearts it is morally wrong to borrow from our children and grandchildren to pay for the needs of today. We need to put our fiscal house in order. And he was a champion of that. He was a champion of a right understanding of limited government, of how government could break loose of the boundaries of good intentions. And he shaped my thinking in very profound ways.
This is obviously an election fall, and because of it,
I noticed.
we've noticed. Middle Tennessee
I was
State.
hoping to be a lot busier right now, to be honest.
Middle Tennessee State University is running a lecture series all fall on democracy, being examined from different perspectives, different disciplinary areas, and lots of different viewpoints. And we had titled today's conversation, Defining Democracy. Now, skipping textbook and political science definitions, I think democracy is something that speaks to the heart of each of us. How would you define democracy, sir?
Government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
It's simple.
Abraham Lincoln, I think, first used those words at Gettysburg.
What role do you think that public institutions of higher learning, such as ours, should play in advancing civic knowledge and advancing democracy in the United States?
Well, I think first and foremost is to understand that while the principles of democracy operate within our system, we're a republic. We have representative democracy, and the way that you preserve government of the people, by the people, and for the people, in my judgment and humble opinion, is that you preserve the foundations of the republic that are enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. And that sounds a little bit wonky even to my ears, but I think if I could challenge any of the Blue Raiders that are here, undergraduates, is think about that word republic. You know, the day that they signed that Constitution, the day that we commemorate today, history records that Benjamin Franklin walked out of the Philadelphia State House and was approached by a prominent local woman. And she said, "So what kind of government did you create?" And Benjamin Franklin said, history records, "A republic if you can keep it." And we've kept it for all of these years. I mean, from the American founding, 1776, but in the 1787, that hot summer, I would submit to you that they claimed a democracy in the Revolutionary War, but they protected that democracy in the republic that they crafted in that hot summer of 1787. And the way they protected it was by creating structures around which you would have a separation of powers and accountability. And then, of course, in the Constitution itself, they also added what we commonly refer to as the Bill of Rights, but it was just the first 10 amendments to the Constitution that reiterated the core principles that had animated their fight in the Revolution: the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms. All of those things were included. But the 10th Amendment at the end of that Bill of Rights, a lot of people think that the 10th Amendment that essentially says that the powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and the people. I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially the thought. A lot of people think that that's a new thought in the Constitution. I actually think the 10th Amendment, Dr. Evans, is an exclamation mark at the end of the Constitution. Because if you study the Constitution, I encourage you to do it. As Americans, there's probably no more profitable thing apart from that book that I try and open every morning with the letters HOLY on the front. But to study the Constitution and to learn the foundation of the Republic, you see that it is a document of a limited federal government. It was the way that they brought together those 13 desperate states that had just fought for their independence. And so for me, the way we preserve American democracy is we preserve the Republic, that we preserve the principles in the Constitution. But that requires that people stand by it. It requires that we keep it, like Benjamin Franklin said.
And obviously, Articles 1, 2, and 3 describe this tripartite system that was established for us to forever be in tension with each other, so that each branch of government would oversee and counter the others. And in a very recent Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity. It was pretty well decided that the official acts of the president can be considered immune from any kind of prosecution. What's your own understanding of this, and what do you think that was in terms of the framers' intent in granting such powers?
Well, Alexander Hamilton said in one of the Federalist Papers